He was last seen alive, laughing in the rain, a ghost captured on grainy CCTV, and in that single, fleeting moment, no one could have known they were witnessing the first scene of a murder mystery that would captivate and horrify the world. This is not just the story of a death, but of a life meticulously unraveled, a crime hidden in plain sight, and a truth so bizarre it seemed ripped from the pages of a thriller. This is the story of Alexei Vance. To the public, Alexei Vance was a portrait of success painted in the vibrant colors of the modern Renaissance. At 34, he was an Oscar-nominated actor known for his intense method preparations, a tech investor with a Midas touch, and a celebrated philanthropist who funded literacy programs in developing nations. His smile was a permanent fixture on red carpets, a flash of perfect white teeth against a tan earned on exotic, well-documented vacations. But behind the curated Instagram feed and the glowing magazine profiles was another man. Friends described a recent shift, a new tension behind the eyes. He'd canceled a major film project citing creative differences, but had privately confessed to his sister, Clara, that he felt trapped in the narrative of Alexei Vance. He was, in his own words, trying to find the exit. The exit, it turned out, was a dead end in the garage of his ultra-modern, multi-million-dollar hillside home. On the morning of October 12th, his longtime personal assistant, Maya Petrova, found him. Alexei was in the driver's seat of his vintage Porsche, the engine cold, the garage door sealed. There were no signs of struggle, no forced entry, and beside him on the passenger seat lay a single typed note. The contents were never officially released, but leaks described it as short, poetic, and deeply melancholic. The initial ruling, influenced by the note, the canceled project, and the testimony of those who spoke of his recent mood, was suicide. The world mourned. Headlines blared, a talent silenced, and talk shows aired tearful tributes. The case, it seemed, was closed before it had even truly begun. But Clara Vance refused to believe it. Where the police saw a sad, final note, Clara saw a voice that didn't sound like her brother's. Where they saw a locked garage, she saw a man who was intensely private and would never have chosen such a public, messy end. She was a forensic accountant by trade, a woman who trusted numbers and patterns more than words, and the pattern of Alexei's death didn't add up. She hired a private investigator, a grizzled former homicide detective named Frank Corrigan, whose skepticism was as worn as his leather jacket. Together, they began peeling back the glossy veneer of Alexei's life, and what they found was a web of financial entanglement and hidden resentments. Their investigation led them to the most unlikely of suspects: Julian Croft, Alexei's business manager and, supposedly, his closest friend. Julian was the quiet force behind the throne, a man who preferred spreadsheets to spotlights. He was impeccably dressed, softly spoken, and had been the architect of Alexei's fortune. He was also the sole beneficiary of a $20 million life insurance policy, a fact he had inexplicably failed to disclose to police. When confronted by Clara and Corrigan, Julian was calm, almost rehearsed. He explained the policy as a standard business practice. It was to secure loans against future earnings, he said, his hands steady. A tragedy, yes, but a financial necessity. Alexei understood. But his eyes, Corrigan noted, didn't match the sorrow in his voice. The break in the case came from the most mundane of places: the digital footprint. Alexei, paranoid about his privacy, had a sophisticated home security system. Julian, who managed all of Alexei's affairs, had provided the police with records showing no unusual activity on the night of the death. But Clara remembered something. Months earlier, Alexei, as a joke, had given her a vintage music box. He'd said, "If you ever really need me, the secret's in the song." Desperate, Clara pried open the base of the box. Inside, tucked away, was a tiny, encrypted USB drive. On it was a backup of his entire security system, synced to a server Julian didn't know existed. The data was a revelation. It showed that on the night he died, Julian Croft had entered Alexi's home using his own key code at 11:04 p.m. The internal cameras had been remotely deactivated for a 47-minute window, but the external and garage sensors told a different story. A microphone on the garage door sensor had picked up audio. The recording was muffled, distorted, but clear enough. Two voices. First, Alexi, slurred and confused. "Jules, what did you... I don't feel right." Then Julian's voice, cold and stripped of all its usual warmth. "It's better this way, Alexi. The story's over. Time for the final act." There was a struggle, the sound of a car door, and then silence. Julian had not discovered a suicide. He had staged one. The note was a forgery. The sedative in Alexi's system administered by the one person he trusted with his life. The courtroom drama was a media circus. The prosecution painted Julian as a greedy spider who had woven a web of control around his famous friend, only to kill him when Alexi began to show signs of pulling away. The defense argued the audio was unreliable, circumstantial, and that Julian was a grieving friend being persecuted by conspiracy theory. Julian sat through it all, a mask of quiet dignity, occasionally dabbing at his eyes with a handkerchief. The tension built for weeks, a slow-burning fuse. The climax wasn't a piece of forensic evidence, but a moment of sheer human error. On the stand, under a brutal cross-examination, the prosecutor asked Julian to describe the contents of the suicide note. He hesitated, then gave a vague, emotional summary. The prosecutor then presented the actual note, still sealed in an evidence bag. "Read it, Mr. Croft. Read the words you claim your best friend left for the world." Julian's composure cracked. His voice trembled as he read the generic, sorrowful lines. And then the prosecutor delivered the killing blow. "Interesting, because the note you just read is a fake. We created it this morning. The real note remains sealed. You just described a note you never saw, because you were the one who wrote it." The gasp in the courtroom was audible. Julian's face went blank with the realization that he had been trapped. In that moment, the carefully constructed narrative of the grieving friend shattered into a million pieces, revealing the calculating murderer beneath. Julian Croft was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. He never confessed, never showed an ounce of remorse. The world had its verdict, but the tragedy of Alexi Vance was left permanently stained. He was a man who had everything and yet felt so trapped that he was planning an escape, a plan his best friend used to orchestrate his murder. The glamour, the fame, the fortune, it was all a gilded cage. So, the next time you see a celebrity's perfect life plastered across a screen, remember the ghost laughing in the rain, and remember that the most dangerous monster isn't always a stranger in the shadows. Sometimes it's the keeper of the keys, smiling as they lock the door from the inside. If stories like this keep you hooked, hit subscribe for more.